Daughter told me I was ruining Christmas. She said it with a straight face, sitting at my dining room table, eating the prime rib I had spent 4 hours preparing, wearing the cashmere sweater I had bought her 2 weeks earlier. And the reason I was ruining Christmas? I told her son-in-law he could not move his mother into my basement. That's where the story starts, right there. December 23rd, the smell of roasted garlic and pine in the air, Nat King Cole on the speaker, and my daughter looking at me like I had just kicked a dog. Let me back up a little, because none of this makes sense without the full picture. My name is Neil. I'm 63 years old. I spent 31 years as a mechanical engineer for a manufacturing company outside of Columbus, Ohio. I retired early, 59, because I had been smart with money my entire adult life. No secrets to it. I drove used cars. I packed my lunch. I maxed out my 401k every single year starting at 27. My wife, God rest her soul, used to tease me about clipping coupons. She passed 8 years ago from a stroke. Breast cancer survivor who beat the odds twice, and then a stroke took her at 54. Life is not fair, and I made peace with that a long time ago. After she passed, I threw myself into the house, fixed the back deck, repainted the whole interior, put in a proper workshop in the garage because I always wanted one, and now I finally had the time. I learned to cook, really cook, not just grill burgers, and I got decent at it. I made friends at the VFW hall. I traveled some. Budapest, Portugal, a week in Montana just hiking by myself with a bad map and good boots. My daughter, Renata. I'm sorry, that name's taken. Let me give her a different one. My daughter Ivy is 40. She's my only child. Her mother and I tried for years to have more, and Ivy was our miracle. We gave her everything, not in a spoiled way. I want to be clear about that. We gave her a good childhood. Vacations. College paid in full, no loans. A used Honda Civic when she turned 17. Reliable and safe. When she married her husband, I gave them $50,000 as a down payment on their first house. Not a loan, a gift. I signed the check and I never once mentioned it again. Her husband's name is Nate. Nate is 42. He works in sales. Medical devices, I think. Though I honestly couldn't tell you the details because every time I asked, his eyes went somewhere else and he'd changed the subject. He's not a bad-looking guy. Firm handshake when I first met him, which I appreciated. But there was always something off about the way he looked at my house. Not at me, at the house, the square footage, the finished basement, the lot, like he was calculating something. They got married 6 years ago. Nice ceremony. I paid for a good chunk of it. My idea, not theirs. Ivy's mother had dreamed of a real wedding for her, and I wanted to honor that. I don't say this to keep score. I say it because it matters later. For the first few years, things were fine. Holidays here. Sunday dinners there. Ivy would call me on her lunch break sometimes just to chat. Nate was polite enough. Distant, but polite. I figured that was just his personality. Then Nate's mother started having health problems. I put that in quotes not because I'm cruel, but because the health problems seemed to appear and disappear depending on what was needed. When she wanted sympathy, she had fibromyalgia. When she wanted to visit for extended periods, she had anxiety that made traveling alone impossible. When Ivy mentioned looking into assisted living options, she suddenly rallied and cooked a full Thanksgiving spread to prove she was fine. I'm not a doctor. Maybe all of it was real. But I noticed the pattern. Nate's mother, I'll call her Donna, lived about 40 minutes from my house in a rental apartment she shared with her boyfriend, a retired guy named something or other who I met exactly once at Ivy's birthday. Around 18 months ago, Donna's boyfriend passed away. Heart attack quick. And after that, Donna was alone, and suddenly the health problems became a full-time topic of conversation every time I saw my daughter. Dad, Donna's really struggling. Dad, she can't do stairs anymore. Dad, she can't do stairs anymore. Dad, her apartment lease is up in March. I listened. I was sympathetic. I even offered to help research senior living communities in the area. Some of them are genuinely nice, like small apartment complexes with activities and meal programs, not the grim nursing homes people picture. I printed out information. I went with Ivy to tour one of them. It was a beautiful place. Donna refused to even look at the brochure. What Donna wanted, what Nate wanted, was to move her into my basement. My basement is not a dungeon. When I retired, I renovated it properly. There's a full bathroom down there, kitchenette, a bedroom space, its own entrance from the side yard. I did it thinking someday I might rent it out, or have a guest space for friends visiting from out of town. It's comfortable, it's private, but it's mine, and I live alone in this house, and I like it that way. The first time it came up, Nate brought it up casually. He said something like, "You got all that space down there, Neil. Doesn't seem right that it just sits empty." I smiled and said I used it for storage and projects. Which was true. He dropped it. I thought that was the end. It was not the end. It came up again at Easter. Then at the 4th of July, when Nate had a few beers on the back porch and got more direct about it, he said Donna was practically family, and that having her close would be good for everyone. I told him, as kindly as I could, that I wasn't looking to have a tenant or a housemate, regardless of who it was. He nodded slowly in that way people do when they're filing the conversation away, not letting it go. By October, Ivy had started making comments too, small ones at first. "Dad, the basement is just sitting there. Dad, Donna asked about you the other day. She thinks you're wonderful." Little nudges. I started to feel the shape of what was happening, and I didn't like the shape at all. I spoke with my attorney in November. His name is Roy, and no, that's not on the restricted list. Good. Roy Callahan. I've used Roy for 20 years. He handled my wife's estate, my own estate planning, the paperwork when I sold some rental property I had back in the early 2000s. Roy's meticulous, and he doesn't sugarcoat things. When I explained the situation to him over the phone, he listened and then said, "Neil, protect yourself now, before this becomes a thing." We set up a meeting for after the holidays. Then Christmas arrived. December 23rd. I cooked all day. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, a twice-baked potato casserole that my wife used to make every year, and I finally got right after 6 attempts. I was genuinely happy. I had a good bottle of Red Breathing on the counter. I had wrapped gifts. I had put up a tree for the first time in 3 years because I felt like it. Ivy and Nate arrived around 5. Ivy looked tired in a way I couldn't quite name. Nate walked in, looked around and said, "Smells great in here." He said it like a man who had already decided something. We sat down. The meal was good. I was glad. For about 40 minutes, everything was warm and normal, and I thought maybe I had been overthinking the whole thing. Then Nate set down his fork and said, "We wanted to talk to you about Donna." I put my own fork down. I felt the temperature in the room shift, not the actual temperature. Something else. "This isn't the time," I said. "We're having Christmas dinner." "Dad," Ivy said, and there was something in her voice I hadn't heard before, a hardness, or maybe it was desperation. I still don't know which. Nate said that Donna's landlord had decided not to renew her lease. He said this like it was my fault. He said she needed somewhere to go by February 1st. He said my basement was the obvious answer, that it was the right thing to do, that family takes care of family. I said, very calmly, that I understood Donna was in a difficult situation and that I was willing to help them research other options, but that I was not going to have someone move into my home. I said, "This is my house. I live here alone, and I want it to stay that way." Nate's jaw tightened. He said, "You're being selfish. You have a whole basement sitting empty, and you won't help someone in need." I said, "Nate, I don't ask you to open your home to people I want to help. Please extend me the same respect." That was when Ivy stood up. She said I didn't care about her. She said I never had. She said that all my life I had been withholding, that I didn't know how to really love people, that her mother would be ashamed of me. She was crying and yelling at the same time. She brought up childhood things. Vague things. Things I didn't even fully recognize as memories. She said that if I really loved her, I would do this one thing. I sat very still. Then Nate reached across the table, picked up his wine glass. I want to be precise here, it was a full glass of Cabernet, my good bottle, and he threw it at me. Not near me, at me. The glass hit my shoulder, bounced, broke on the floor. The wine soaked through my shirt, cold and red and immediate. A shard caught the side of my forearm. Not deep, but it broke the skin. I could feel the sting and then the slow warmth of blood. There was a moment of absolute silence. Nate looked at his own hand like it belonged to someone else. Ivy stopped mid-sob. I looked down at my arm, at the wine spreading dark across my sleeve, and I thought, quietly and clearly, this is exactly what I needed. I stood up. I said, "I'm going to need you both to leave now." Ivy started to say something. I said, "Now." I walked to the kitchen, pressed a dish towel to my arm. I heard them talking in low, urgent voices in the dining room. I heard the front door close. I stood there for a moment in the quiet. Then I picked up my phone and I called 911. This is the part that I think some people miss. I know some of you watching this would have called immediately right when it happened. I understand that impulse, but in that moment something in me wanted them out of my house first. I needed them gone before I could think straight. The second that door closed, I called. The dispatcher was calm and professional. I told her I had been assaulted by my son-in-law, that I had a laceration on my arm, that the individuals had just left. She sent a unit. While I waited, I took photos of my arm with my phone. Photos of the broken glass on the floor. Photos of the wine on the wall, on the tablecloth, on the chair. I was deliberate about it. I wasn't in a panic. I was surprisingly calm. The kind of calm that comes when you've already half expected something and it finally arrives. 2 officers arrived within 12 minutes. They were thorough and professional. They took my statement. They photographed the scene themselves. One of them bandaged my arm. The cut wasn't bad enough for an ER, fortunately, just needed cleaning and a proper bandage. They told me they would follow up with Nate. After they left, I sat down in my kitchen and I texted Roy. Phase 1 is in the books. Call me when you're back in the office. Roy called me the morning of the 26th. I told him everything. He said, "Good. You called the police. You documented. You're in a very strong position." We moved our meeting up to the 28th. I want to tell you what happened in the days between, because it matters. Ivy called me 6 times on Christmas Eve. I didn't answer. She left 2 voicemails. The first was defensive, explaining that Nate didn't mean it, that he was under a lot of stress, that I had provoked him by being so cold. The second voicemail, left around 11 at night, was different. She was crying quietly. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't know why she said those things about her mother. She said she loved me. I played both voicemails to Roy. He said, "Save those. Here is what I have been thinking about since November, since before any of this escalated. My estate, my retirement accounts, my house, my investment portfolio. I've spent 31 years being careful, and I have assets, not extravagant, but significant, enough to matter. My original estate plan left the bulk of everything to Ivy, with a small percentage to a few charities my wife cared about. Roy and I had already discussed revisions. After Christmas, I made them final. I'm not going to share the exact numbers or the exact details, because that's not the point. The point is that I restructured things so that my assets go into a trust. Ivy can receive income from the trust annually, but access to the principal is conditional. It cannot be directed or influenced by a spouse or any third party. There are oversight provisions. If she divorces, the structure remains protective. It's not a punishment, it's a firewall. I also established clear documentation that the $50,000 down payment from her wedding was a completed gift, not a loan, so there's no ambiguity about that later. Roy suggested it, and he was right. Nate was charged with simple assault. Ohio takes this seriously. He was not arrested that night. They weren't there when the officers arrived, but the officers followed up, filed the report, and the county prosecutor's office contacted me in early January. I gave my full statement, provided the photos, provided the medical report from my own doctor who saw the cut at a follow-up visit. Nate hired a lawyer. His lawyer sent me a letter through Roy essentially suggesting I drop the matter to keep the family peace. Roy's response, paraphrased, "No, the case is pending." I don't know how it will resolve. I don't expect him to go to prison. This isn't a movie. But I expect him to have a record, and I expect that to matter. And I expect him to know that I was not the kind of man who would simply let it go. Ivy and I didn't speak for almost 6 weeks after Christmas. Then, in early February, she called me on a Tuesday morning, and I answered. She wasn't calling about Nate, or about Donna, or about the estate, or about any of it. She just said, "Dad, I made your mom's potato casserole last night. I used her recipe card." I said, "How did it turn out?" She said, "Not as good as yours yet." I said, "It took me 6 tries to get it right. Give yourself a few more." We talked for 40 minutes. We didn't talk about any of the hard stuff. Maybe we will, eventually. Maybe we won't. I don't know where Ivy and Nate's marriage stands. I don't know where my relationship with my daughter goes from here. I know I love her, and I know love does not mean you open every door someone knocks on. Donna, for what it's worth, found a senior living apartment in a community about 25 minutes from Ivy's house. It has a meal program and a shuttle to medical appointments. From what I understand, she's doing fine. She did not need my basement. She needed a real solution, not a temporary one, propped up on someone else's discomfort. I've been asked. By friends. By my buddy Warren at the VFW who heard about all this. By my neighbor who watched the police car pull up on Christmas Eve with wide eyes. I've been asked if I feel guilty, if I feel like I should have just said yes. Let Donna move in. Keep the peace. Avoid all of it. Here's what I say. I built this life with my own hands, not just the money. The discipline, the years, the patience, the loneliness after my wife died. The mornings I woke up in this house alone and had to decide again to keep going, keep building, keep tending to something. I earned every inch of this house. Every quiet morning with my coffee in the workshop. Every evening I cooked dinner just for myself with real ingredients on real dishes, because I deserve a good meal even when no one's watching. No one's sense of entitlement. Not my son-in-law's, not my daughter's frustration, not a woman I barely know who needs a place to live. None of that erases what I built. And the moment I let someone throw a wine glass at me in my own dining room and just clean it up and say nothing, the moment I let that define who I am, that's the moment I lose everything that actually matters. I didn't lose that. Roy told me last week that Nate's attorney reached out again about a settlement. We're talking. I'm not in a hurry. The prime rib, by the way, was excellent. Best I've ever made. I wrapped up the leftovers and ate them for 3 days straight, alone in my kitchen, watching the snow come down in the backyard. And I was okay. More than okay. Some lessons don't arrive gently. Some of them arrive in a room full of broken glass and spilled wine and the sound of a door closing. But if you've done the work, if you've been careful, if you've kept your own records and trusted the right people, you'll be standing when it's over. I'm still standing,